First-party data is quickly becoming a non-negotiable requirement for businesses as international privacy standards tighten. Companies that don't build a solid first-party foundation end up facing higher acquisition costs, weaker marketing performance, inaccurate analytics, and inevitably thinner margins. And on top of that, there's the added pressure of companies needing to stay compliant with the many evolving international laws like GDPR, CCPA, and many others. So what actually is it? At its simplest, a first-party data infrastructure describes the ecosystem you build to collect, handle, and activate data that your users and customers share with you directly, with clear, auditable consent and transparency. This ecosystem is vital, especially for powering modern systems and tools that businesses rely on to grow. For consumers, it safeguards trust. They know exactly what they're agreeing to, and they're not being tracked or traded behind the scenes by third-party companies that they've never interacted with in the first place. Businesses that adopt this approach to first-party data infrastructure gain a meaningful competitive edge, better performance in marketing, accurate analytics for decision-making, and fundamentally better customer relationships. And in most cases, that leads to higher profitability. So in order to set up a compliant first-party data system, it helps to understand what we're actually trying to avoid. If a business uses data from people who never interacted with it in the first place, that's third-party data, whether that's through renting or buying customer lists or even tracking users across other websites with third-party cookies. And in many cases, this data is collected or sold, sometimes without the user even realizing their information is being passed around or exploited. And naturally, people don't like this. This is why international lawmakers are steadily restricting and regulating the use of third-party data. And even if some laws haven't caught up yet, the technology itself is removing this option anyway. Modern devices and browsers are blocking the use of third-party data. And this is why a common complaint for businesses that are still relying on these older third-party systems like pixels or third-party cookies, they often see that their analytics might be inaccurate or their marketing systems feel like they're not working as effectively as they used to. And that's because these old systems were built on third-party data. And as that steadily disappears, performance drops, costs rise, and the competitive edge erodes. Now it's time to actually set up a first-party data infrastructure for our business. And let's assume that we're going to do this for any company. Today, we'll give the example of transparentdigitalservices.com. Our advice for the most robust, straightforward, and cost-effective solution is to use Google Tag Manager and a verified consent management platform. If our job is to make sure that data collected on our users is done so with the correct consent and is sent accurately to the right platforms, we would need some kind of traffic management system that also integrates with some kind of consent management platform. And that's essentially what Google Tag Manager really does. Google Tag Manager, GTM for short, is a tool that picks up the key actions that your users take on your web store or website. Imagine a user loads a page. This Google Tag Manager loads too, and in doing so it observes actions like page views or clicks, if someone adds the product to cart or buys something or fills in a form. It's all the stuff that you would want to measure. And also, at the same time, it listens to the user's consent as part of the process. Those measured actions get pushed into something called the data layer, which is just a structured way of recording what exactly happened and when. Different platforms may also send data in different formats. Imagine if a website purchase was slightly different to a Shopify purchase. So Google Tag Manager also acts like a translator or a normalizer. It makes sure that everything is kind of ingested into one clean, consistent structure before that data is delivered onwards. This is important because it gives us one single source of truth for our data, the conversions, revenue, and the user behavior. Here's where our setup becomes a true first-party system. Google Tag Manager, as we just saw, sends this structured data from one source of truth to a server endpoint which sits on our own domain. I'll give the example of a subdomain like data.transparentdigitalservices.com. Sending user data to an endpoint under the same domain that they're interacting with is by nature considered a first-party interaction. And it's an important distinction because it means it's not blocked by devices or browsers. It's not a third-party transfer. And this is because Google Tag Manager is actually hosted at our own domain, and for that we recommend using a purpose-made platform called Stape. This server-side Google Tag Manager container is where the data gets cleaned, enriched and translated and also protected before it is sent in the correct formats to all of the various different analytics and marketing tools that rely on this good quality data. And remember, all of these platforms are now reading from one accurate source of truth. Here we can see the comparison between an old third-party system with third-party cookies, pixels, installed apps, and custom scripts which are all recording duplicate versions of the same event and attempting to send it in different formats to different locations through the browser or the device. Now let's compare that to a new modern setup, where one version of the true interaction with the user is measured before being carefully translated to each platform. The server setup is what gives full control, because now as a business you can decide exactly which data gets sent to which location. And that means you can do some interesting things, like you can redact or hash personal information, stopping PII like names, email addresses or phone numbers being sent without encryption or consent to advertising tools. This is a vital step because ad platforms often disregard data that's sent to them if this hashing process is not strictly followed. And this can kind of be a hidden catch, because the ambition of protecting user data means if you are accepting marketing information but it's not formatted in the right way, a lot of these digital tools have to essentially ignore it. And also, let's say a user doesn't give consent. Well, the data is handled accordingly by each platform because those consent flags are sent along with the event data. And this is what makes it fundamentally compliant with modern data laws. So now we're building a picture and we understand the flow of data from the client-side Google Tag Manager to the server-side Google Tag Manager, both hosted at our own domain via Stape, which makes it fundamentally a first-party data transfer. A common next question is, how does this correctly formatted and consented data actually arrive at the platforms that we need to deliver it to? If you think Meta, TikTok, Google Ads, or any of the other platforms we might need, or the analytics properties that we use, well, it happens through something called a conversions API. Despite the intimidating name, it's actually quite simple. Instead of asking the user's browser or device to send these conversion events, which is unreliable and dependent on third-party cookies, instead of that old system, now we have our own server that can send the data directly to the server of another platform in a clean, consistent format that you control via this server-side Google Tag Manager. This server-to-server delivery is what makes CAPI so powerful. It's like a digital bridge that restores accuracy, stabilizes your attribution, and gives the ad algorithms the information they need to learn who actually converts. And because the data comes from your own first-party infrastructure, and you can see that it's done in a consented manner from a verified domain, that means the platforms trust it more, and ultimately optimize your campaigns with far greater precision, which naturally leads to considerable competitive advantage, and in most cases, higher profitability for the businesses that adopt it. So now we've explored the core tracking infrastructure, there's one more piece of this puzzle that makes the whole system quite intelligent, especially for increasing the efficiency of online marketing spend. Now, this is something that most businesses can easily lose without even realizing it, and it's click IDs. These are small bits of information that ad platforms attach to your traffic after clicking on an ad. So you may have seen them before without necessarily knowing what they do, but they're things like the Google, Facebook, or TikTok click ID, or other kind of tracking parameters. They might look insignificant, but they're kind of the glue that connects the dots for your marketing system. Because without that origin click ID or similar tracking parameters, it's very difficult for an ads platform to know kind of where a user's journey originated from if it receives conversion data. Imagine someone makes a purchase and that data arrives at an ad account. If the click ID isn't present in that purchase, the ad account can't tell, well, what was the original ad that they saw that may have led to that journey of the user purchasing. And that is simply because these click IDs are disappearing. The problem is modern browsers and devices just simply don't keep these IDs around for long. If you're using a browser like Safari, it wipes them. Firefox, chuck it in the bin. Apple blocks them. Most other browsers and devices are all starting to follow the same path. So when these click IDs vanish, three things immediately break for our business. Number one, tracking looks inaccurate. Two, analytics and ad platforms kind of stop agreeing. Ad platforms become unstable and unpredictable. And importantly, the origin of the user's journey from, stranger to purchaser becomes very unclear because we can't track where they originally came from. So why does a first-party data infrastructure fix this problem? Well, it all comes down to the fact that it is first-party, and that means that you can store something called a first-party cookie. In this new system, when a user lands on your site, what we do is immediately capture the original click ID, whether it's Google, Facebook, TikTok, or any of the others, and we store it safely and securely in a first-party cookie that lives under your own domain. This means when the user returns even from a different source to the same domain, or they eventually convert by triggering, say, a purchase event, that original click ID is sent along with the event to the analytics and marketing platforms. Now, this really gives the ad platforms a kind of memory. It means that they get the ability to learn who actually converted and where they originally came from in that user journey. And remember, they're all doing this while reading from one single source of truth. And here's the payoff, because the impact is huge. When it comes to making key decisions in your marketing engine, for example, considering which platforms and budgets are actually growing your business, or let's say understanding the most effective first point of discovery is vital. In some cases, it can be the difference between a profitable or a loss-making campaign. So many companies are unknowingly losing a huge portion of this attribution data because these click IDs simply disappear at some point in the journey before the conversion happens. So storing them correctly in your own first-party system means you instantly recover a massive amount of lost signal. In fact, for most businesses, this single step can restore the attribution clarity that they've lost over the last few years. And of course, that clarity means smarter optimizations for the platforms, lower cost per acquisition of purchases, higher return on ad spend, and more stable performance fundamentally. And I would say that's because these platforms are really only as good as the data that you feed into them. So now we can see how a first-party data system operates. Users interact with our website or web store, which loads Google Tag Manager and an integrated consent management platform. The events that are triggered by the user are normalized and standardized, and this data is passed through the data layer into your own server-side Google Tag Manager along with the original consent flags. We host this on Stape, so it's running on our own domain, which makes it fundamentally a first-party system. And from here, our server container processes, enriches, and improves the incoming data before formatting it in the correct manner so it's delivered to each respective platform in a server-to-server transfer. So now, all of your tools are receiving correctly formatted data from one single unified source of truth, and it means that overnight your analytics is correct, the consented data arriving at ad systems is of the highest possible quality. It means it's a cleaner system, a compliant system, and ultimately the backbone of modern first-party data-driven growth. So I hope this video helps, and if you do intend to set up your own first-party data infrastructure yourself, we've put a bunch of links below for some amazing resources that we trust to help you through the whole process. And there's also a link to our partner Stape, which we highly advise you use if you want a simple way to set up and host your Google Tag Manager containers. And alternatively, if you are looking for a specialized team to handle this work for you, even if you've got larger, complex, multi-domain setups, then simply hit the link below, and we typically get back to teams within 24 hours. So on that note, until next time.